You think you are an individual, but, well, you're not. I mean, look down at your hands right now.
Yeah, you really aren't looking at a single living being.
Right. You are looking at a walking, talking society made up of, like, 30 trillion tiny, blind, deeply selfish workers.
It's wild to think about. Every perception you have of being this unified person calling the shots is, biologically speaking, an incredibly convincing illusion.
In exploring that, uh, mind-bending reality is our mission today. We are diving into this really profound essay titled Why Do We Die? By Dick Cookin.
Which builds heavily on the concepts from the book The Mystery of Life and Consciousness, right?
Exactly. So today, we're going to deconstruct our ancient, deeply held illusions about having a soul or a separate mind. We'll explore the shocking mechanics of the human body as this cellular metropolis.
And ultimately, we are going to try to answer the ultimate existential question, like why do we actually age, and why is death an evolutionary necessity?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp the biological truth, we have to unravel the psychological fiction that humanity has believed for thousands of years.
Yeah, across virtually every culture on Earth, early humans developed some form of dualism. They separated the physical flesh from the abstract mind.
Which makes sense. I mean, looking at it from their perspective, with absolutely no modern science, drawing that line was entirely logical.
Totally. You feel your body interact with the physical world, you feel the pain of a cut or the heat of a fire, but you experience your mind as weightless.
Right, invisible.
Yeah.
Utterly detached from the mechanics of the physical world. It's like the ultimate locked room mystery. You can't touch a thought.
No, you can't. You can't put a memory on a scale to weigh it. So our ancestors just assumed the mind had to be made of some non-physical, ethereal substance.
And it wasn't just a philosophical guess. The essay highlights how early humans were observing very specific things that seem to absolutely prove this dualism. Take dreams, for example.
Oh, right. Dreams are a huge piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, because to someone without any concept of brain chemistry, watching someone sleep is fascinating. The physical body is lying there in the dirt, paralyzed, practically dead to the world.
But then the person wakes up and reports having been walking, fighting, or exploring entirely different landscapes.
The only rational conclusion for an early observer is that the conscious spirit temporarily exited the physical shell to travel.
Exactly. But if dreams explained the wandering mind, how did they explain waking anomalies? Like, consider the ingestion of hallucinogenic plants.
Oh, wow, yeah.
When a person consumed these substances, their behavior drastically altered while they were fully awake and moving. Their voice might shift, their physical mannerisms would change, and they would interact with unseen realities.
To the tribe watching, this didn't look like a chemical-altering neural pathways.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like literal possession.
Right. It appeared as though a foreign spirit had entered and temporarily hijacked the biological machine.
And then the most profound evidence they observed was the permanent separation.
Death.
Yeah, the ultimate split. When someone died, the biological machinery was left completely intact. The heart, the lungs, the brain, they were all still physically there. Yet the animating spark, the warmth, the personality of the individual just vanished instantly.
Because without microscopes to see cellular death or heart failure, it just appeared that the ghost simply departed the machine.
Which naturally evolved into animism, right? The belief that if human bodies had spirits, then animals, trees, and rivers must have them too.
Exactly. It paved the way for ancestor worship and laid the foundation for the massive religious frameworks we see today. And what's fascinating here is how this belief system is actually the ultimate demonstration of our brain's virtual capabilities.
How do you mean?
Well, our prefrontal cortex is fundamentally a meaning-making machine. It absolutely cannot tolerate an existential vacuum or the idea of chaotic randomness.
Because randomness is terrifying. If we are just flesh moving through a chaotic universe, that offers zero psychological comfort.
Precisely. So to ensure our survival, the brain generates what the author describes as a second reality. It constructs an internal psychological world composed of narratives, moral structures, and concepts of spiritual safety.
And it weaves this second reality so seamlessly over the physical world that we perceive concepts like the soul or destiny as tangible facts.
Yeah, the brain is constantly interpreting the harsh, indifferent biological reality of nature and dressing it up in a cohesive, intentional story.
So we use language, culture, and religion to anchor these abstract illusions deep into our neural networks until they feel as solid as the ground we walk on.
Right.
But if the mind as an independent entity is just a survival mechanism, like a psychological blanket woven by the brain, what is the actual physical reality of what we are?
Well, the literal truth is that the human body is a society of single-celled organisms.
Hmm.
We often hear the body compared to a machine, but a machine is an assembly of inert, dead parts.
Right. Gears and wires.
Exactly. But the body is a living, breathing cell world. From a tiny beetle to an elephant, every living organism is a massive metropolis of cells organized into specialized tissues and organs.
Aside from inert byproducts like hair and tooth enamel, every single part of you is a collection of microscopic organisms working in concert.
And the scale of this metropolis is almost impossible to visualize. We are talking about 30 trillion individual citizens.
30 trillion. That's just staggering. And these cells are highly advanced chemical factories, right? With an average diameter of just 0.015 millimeters.
Yeah, they are tiny. If you line them up, you could fit 66 of these entire factories within a single millimeter.
Wow.
And despite their size, each one is wildly complex. Inside almost every cell is a nucleus acting as a highly secure vault for your DNA, which is the literal instruction manual for building proteins.
And outside that vault, you have mitochondria, the power plants. In highly active cells like muscle tissue, you'll find hundreds of these mitochondria burning fuel to generate the energy required for movement.
Right, and the diversity among these citizens is staggering too, especially when you look at their lifespans. In the wild, a single-celled algae might only survive for a day before dividing or dying.
But inside your body, a cell lining your stomach might only last a few days because it lives in a brutal, highly acidic environment. It does its job and gets destroyed.
Yeah, but then you have nerve cells and heart cells. These are highly specialized workers in protected environments that can actually last your entire lifetime.
But the challenge is that these trillions of specialized cells cannot fend for themselves. A wild amoeba can hunt for its own food. Your brain cells cannot.
No, they're completely trapped. The entire society depends completely on what biology calls the microenvironment. The human body is essentially an integrated food processing and delivery unit designed solely to maintain this microenvironment.
The blood.
Yes, the blood and the massive vascular system that carries it. The arteries, veins, and capillaries form a continuous internal river system estimated to be 90,000 kilometers long.
It's like the body is a massive, incredibly complex DoorDash ecosystem.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, there's no central boss or CEO. It's just trillions of specialized workers collectively making sure the delivery network keeps running so everyone gets fed. It's pumping food, water, and oxygen directly to the doorstep of 30 trillion individual cells continuously without a single break.
It is a DoorDash ecosystem, but imagine if the delivery drivers never slept and the roads were 90,000 kilometers long. The brain isn't the CEO in this scenario.
Right.
The brain is just the logistic software making sure the deliveries arrive on time. The brain and the body communicate via nerves and hormones simply to meet the fundamental needs of these cells. You are not a solitary being, you are a superorganism.
So take a second to look down at your hands again. You are not looking at solid singular flesh. You are looking at millions of tiny, individual living organisms that are collaborating at this exact millisecond to form the shape of a hand.
And their survival relies entirely on that 90,000 kilometer delivery system pumping oxygen to them right now.
But that absolute reliance creates a terrifying dynamic. When the microenvironment falls short, when the oxygen or nutrients run low, the cellular society does not politely request assistance.
Oh no, it seizes control.
The tyranny of the cells. When the blood is running low on resources, it creates a chemical deficit in the microenvironment. This triggers coercive, urgent signals that shoot from the body straight to the brain.
Unconsciously, we experience this as the intense drive to breathe or the agonizing, all-consuming pain of starvation and thirst.
That's right. The drive for survival at the cellular level completely overrides all higher-order thinking. When cells are starving, they force the macroorganism into desperate, often destructive behaviors.
The sources highlight deer in the dead of winter as a great example. Driven mad by the cellular demand for calories, they will chew the tough, woody sapwood directly off the trunks of trees.
Destroying their teeth just to extract whatever minimal nutrients are trapped inside.
Exactly. And the human examples are even more harrowing. During the Dutch hunger winter of 1944, the famine pushed people to such extremes that they were forced to eat toxic tulip bulbs.
Yeah, they had to specially prepare them to make them even marginally edible. But the biological drive generated by their screaming cells completely crushed any logical aversion to eating a poisonous plant.
The cells will do whatever it takes to survive the day. But it's not just about daily survival, it's about securing the future. We tend to view humans as the pinnacle of evolutionary achievement, but structurally, our massive, complex bodies are just a delayed reproductive strategy for the single cell.
Right. The adult body is simply a massive vehicle that delegates the critical task of reproduction to a handful of highly specialized cells, the egg and the sperm.
Think about the entire life cycle. All that complexity, the 30 trillion cells, it all begins with one single fertilized egg. It divides, differentiates into over 200 different cell types, and builds the metropolis.
And from that moment on, the organism is at the mercy of genetic and hormonal instructions designed purely to ensure that initial cell can copy itself and start the process over.
We see animals completely hijacked by this imperative. Male deer grow these massive, heavy, cumbersome antlers every year. They burn incredible amounts of energy and violently defend territories, risking severe injury.
For what?
For one burst of sperm. One fleeting chance to safely pass on the genetic blueprint before the antlers fall off and the cycle repeats.
The seasonal hormones physically force them into these mating behaviors. They have absolutely no conscious control over the process.
None at all.
Wait, hold on. I need to process the implications of this. Are we saying that human romance, falling in love, the profound desire to build a family, that's all just a complex psychological overlay for a degenetic blueprint?
Well, yes.
Are my cells literally manipulating my brain's reward centers to secure a viable genetic match so they can copy themselves?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we land squarely in the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, which is a concept heavily featured in this analysis.
Oh, Schopenhauer, the cheerful guy.
Yeah, exactly. Schopenhauer posited that life is not something you actively choose, it is something that happens to you. There is a blind, underlying will that drives the cell to divide.
It has no ultimate philosophical goal.
Right. The fertilized egg doesn't ask for your permission to exist. It divides, organizes, and builds the metropolis until you emerge. You don't possess a transcendent desire to live. The cells want to live through you.
That is deeply unsettling. We are essentially highly advanced biological mechs piloted by single-celled organisms.
That's a pretty accurate way to look at it.
But that brings us to a massive contradiction. If these cells are so relentlessly obsessed with surviving, and they possess the ability to manipulate our brains, override our logic, and force us to reproduce, why do we age?
It's the ultimate question.
Right. Why haven't the cells figured out how to keep the metropolis running indefinitely?
It seems like a paradox, but programmed, natural death is a strict evolutionary necessity. Without a built-in expiration date, the system collapses.
How so?
Well, if multicellular organisms didn't die naturally, populations would instantly saturate their environments. They would consume all available resources until mass starvation wiped everyone out.
Oh, I see. And beyond just food, immortality destroys the ability to adapt. If a species, say a mouse population, stopped dying and just occupied their territory forever, there would be no room for new generations.
Exactly. And no new generations means no new mixing of DNA.
The moment a novel virus appears or an ice age hits, the entire immortal population would be eradicated because they'd lack the genetic variation required to adapt.
So a hardwired maximum lifespan is literally an evolutionary selection mechanism to save the species.
Wow. Okay, so how does the body actually enforce this?
The mechanics of this biological countdown timer are hidden deep within the cell nucleus, specifically at the ends of our chromosomes. They're called telomeres.
Telomeres.
Right. Think of them as the protective protein caps on your DNA. Very similar to the little plastic tips at the ends of your shoelaces.
Aglets.
Exactly like aglets.
I knew that word would come in handy someday.
They prevent the genetic material from fraying. However, there is an inherent flaw in the DNA replication process. Every time a cell divides to replace an aging neighbor, the copying machinery cannot quite reach the very end of the DNA strand.
Oh, so it loses a little bit each time.
Yes. With every division, the telomere cap gets a tiny bit shorter. Eventually, after about 50 divisions, which is a threshold known as the Hayflick limit, the cap is essentially worn away.
And then what?
The cell senses that dividing again would damage the actual DNA, so it stops.
And when it stops, it's supposed to initiate a self-destruct sequence called apoptosis, right?
Yes, apoptosis. It's a highly orderly cellular suicide. The old cell dismantles its internal machinery, packages it up neatly, and allows immune cells to consume the debris without causing any inflammation.
It clears the lot so a fresh new cell, generated by our stem cells, can take its place.
Exactly. And stem cells, importantly, have an enzyme called telomerase that rebuilds their own telomeres, allowing them to keep acting as the factories for new workers.
But biology is messy.
Very messy. The apoptosis system frequently fails. Sometimes a cell reaches that 50 division limit, its telomeres are gone, but it refuses to self-destruct. It becomes what biologists call a senescent cell, a zombie.
A biological zombie that refuses to do its job, but refuses to leave the metropolis.
Worse than just taking up space, these zombie cells lose the ability to manage their internal waste. They begin secreting a highly toxic inflammatory sludge of signaling molecules known as SASP.
SASP. Toxic sludge that bleeds into the microenvironment.
This sludge is disastrous. It melts the collagen and healthy tissue matrix surrounding the zombie cell. It creates a localized swamp of chronic inflammation that confuses the immune system, causing it to attack healthy neighboring cells.
And this is the physical mechanism of aging. Visibly, it degrades the structural integrity of your skin, causing wrinkles. Invisibly, it degrades the functional tissue in your heart, lungs, and liver.
Right. Aging is the compounding effect of these zombie cells polluting the delivery system, combined with your stem cells eventually exhausting their ability to churn out replacements.
So scientists realize that if zombie cells are the polluters driving this decay, what if we just acted as the garbage collectors?
And that led to a massive breakthrough experiment at the Mayo Clinic. Researchers wanted to see if they could selectively clear out these senescent cells.
How do they do that?
They genetically modified a group of mice, inserting a dormant biological switch into their cells. They then introduced a specific compound called AT20187.
Okay.
This compound acted like a highly targeted smart bomb. It bypassed healthy cells completely and only activated the dormant suicide gene inside the zombie cells, forcing them to finally undergo apoptosis.
The visual and biological results were staggering. But we need to be clear, the mice did not become immortal, right?
Correct. Their maximum biological lifespan, dictated by the telomere limits of their stem cells, remained fixed, but their health span saw a massive 20 to 30% increase.
Because the toxic SASP sludge was finally drained from the microenvironment.
Exactly. By clearing the biological garbage, the blood and tissue fluids remained pristine. The remaining healthy cells didn't have to fight through chronic inflammation to do their jobs.
The mice still ultimately died of old age, but they didn't suffer from cataracts, muscle wasting, or heart degradation. Their internal logistics network remained uncorrupted right up until the end.
Which is incredible.
So what does this all mean? It means aging isn't a single switch being flipped. It's the slow, toxic degradation of the cellular metropolis.
Which naturally brings us to the final, grim, but absolutely necessary question. What happens at the very end of the line? What is the actual mechanical process of the cell world shutting down?
Everything hinges on the microenvironment. The moment the heart stops beating, the 90,000-kilometer delivery system completely halts.
The steady flow of glucose and, most importantly, oxygen ceases. That exact moment marks the definitive end of the cell world as a unified society.
The metropolis falls off the grid. And the timeline of how the city goes dark is dictated entirely by how much energy different districts require to survive.
It's like rolling blackouts across a massive grid. The most power-hungry sectors collapse first.
So the brain.
Right. The neurons in the brain are the ultimate energy consumers. They require a massive uninterrupted flow of oxygen just to maintain their electrical charges. Within minutes of the blood stopping, they suffocate and die.
The central logistics software goes offline forever.
Shortly after, the high metabolism organs follow suit. The cells of your kidneys and your liver burn through their residual energy and die within 30 to 60 minutes.
But out in the suburbs of the body, some cells have backup generators. Muscle cells are adapted to operate anaerobically, without oxygen, during heavy exercise.
So when the heart stops, they switch to this backup system and can survive independently for several hours. Connective tissue cells and fibroblasts, which have very low energy demands to begin with, might hold on in the dark for 6 to 12 hours.
And the absolute final survivors of the collapse are the bone cells, the osteocytes.
Yes. Their metabolic rate is incredibly slow, and they are physically shielded inside the dense, protective matrix of the skeleton. They can survive isolated and starving for up to 24 to 48 hours.
But eventually, even their internal energy reserves run dry. The cellular structures break apart, and the trillions of individual workers that once formed the shape of a human are gone.
It is a profound, almost overwhelming journey from the illusion of the mind down to the silent death of a bone cell.
It really is. We started by exploring how our brain's desperate need for narrative comfort, invented the concept of the soul out of dreams and hallucinations.
And then we uncovered the mechanical reality that we are not a single machine, but a staggering metropolis of 30 trillion tiny workers, all fed by a continuous 90,000-kilometer vascular river.
We examined how our behaviors, our hunger, and even our drive to reproduce are dictated by our cells' ruthless, blind will to copy themselves.
And we broke down the evolutionary necessity of our own death, driven by shortening telomeres and the slow, toxic accumulation of zombie cells until the heart finally stops and the rolling blackouts consume the city.
This raises an important question, one that bridges the biology back to our everyday experience. If these 30 trillion cells possess no philosophical curiosity, if they do not search for meaning but simply execute chemical reactions for survival, then everything we experience, our joy, our grief, our deep philosophical ponderings, is purely a derivative of their silent labor.
In a very real, measurable sense, our conscious experience is essentially a controlled dream generated by the cell world to keep the vehicle moving.
A controlled dream. It strips away the magic, yet somehow makes the reality of being alive infinitely more awe-inspiring.
I completely agree.
And for you listening, traversing your own day right now, the sources offer a strangely comforting conclusion. Life possesses meaning because it is governed by a countdown timer.
The fact that the cellular metropolis eventually falls apart, that the telomeres eventually run out, is precisely what gives our conscious experience its urgency and its shine.
But before we log off, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to explore on your own. We discussed how stem cells are constantly replacing old, damaged cells with fresh ones, right?
Yeah, the lining of your stomach is entirely replaced every few days. Your skin is constantly shedding and renewing.
So if our entire sense of self is just the collective, temporary effort of trillions of cells continuously dying and being swapped out, then, biologically speaking, the physical version of you that started listening to this deep dive 15 minutes ago is literally made up of slightly different cells than the you who is listening to the end of it right now.
That is a wild thought.
So look down at your hands one more time. Are you even the exact same person you were when we started? Think about that walking society of 30 trillion blind workers. They're clocking in, clocking out, keeping the lights on in the metropolis. Treat them well. Thanks for diving deep with us.